Good evening. My name is Steve Worthington. I'm the mayor of University Place, and I'm calling the September 5th, 2023 University Place City Council meeting to order. And Emmy, if you'd like to start us with a roll.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Keel.
Present.
Councilmember Wood.
Present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey's here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Belisi is excused. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa is excused. Mayor Worthington.
Mayor Worthington, present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Very good, and we'll proceed. And Councilmember Keel, would you be good enough to do us the honors?
Thank you. You all please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. And I would now invite a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
Mayor, I move approval.
We have a motion to approve, and is there a second?
I will second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve and second. It's, do we have any objections to the agenda being approved as distributed? Any changes or objections? Seeing none, the motion is approved and the agenda stands as distributed. It's now time for our public comment portion of the evening, and we have several folks that have signed up. While we're getting ready for that, we have instructions on our screen if you're viewing the meeting at home and would like to participate in public comments. The television screen or computer screen will tell you how you can do that in our live portion of the meeting. And we will first be taking comments here in the room and then turning to any comments online. And to get things started with tonight's comments, Emmy, would you please explain the process a little bit?
This time, citizens can address the council on matters not scheduled for public hearing or council consideration. State law prohibits the use of this forum to promote or oppose any candidate for public office or ballot measure. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please provide your name and address for the record.
Very good. And with that, I would like to invite the first name on the list is Brian Levenseller up to speak to council. So, Mr. Levenseller, would you like to, are you available to do that? Oh, wonderful. So right here next to our city attorney, and we believe that mic is live.
Quick question, time limit on this?
Yeah, 3 minutes is,
Okay,
you have
perfect.
3 minutes available.
Perfect.
And if you could, it would help if you could state your address as well.
Sure. My name is Brian Levenseller. I live at 6512 86th Avenue West in Chambers Plateau. Stand by. A few of my other HOA members will speak further on this matter, but I'll go first tonight. We're here tonight to oppose the trailhead expansion to the Chambers Creek Canyon trail system. Right now, it looks like the plans are to have a new trailhead expanded up to our quiet little residential street in Chambers Plateau. We're opposed to this, and we can go into it further, but the transient community in Pierce County is a big problem, and it is an issue that has moved into Chambers Creek. There are multiple access points that are more, I guess, commercially or more applicable to foot and road traffic than our quiet little street. As a first responder, I work for Central Pierce Fire and Rescue in Parkland and in Spanaway. I've seen firsthand the issues that plague this community. Assaults, traumas, sexual assaults, countless psychiatric involuntary commits. University Place has done a good job to insulate us from this issue that is plaguing the county. I would certainly ask that they continue to do that by not expanding a direct artery from where there are present encampments down in the creek to our quiet little street. Second is, we're not set up for the foot and car traffic that would come with this expansion. There is no parking, and we're just a quiet little street. We don't really want hundreds, thousands of strangers coming into and out of our little neighborhood, when there is direct access a mile and a half west and another half mile east. I mean, a half mile in either direction at the base of Steilacoom and or Kobayashi, or I believe it's like right across the street from Fred Meyer, there's another access point with parking and more accessible to foot traffic. I guess I'm just trying to understand whether this was a pre-planned, or if there's some economic benefit, or if there's like Chambers Crest or Augusta, or say any of the other neighborhoods directly around us who are like banging the door down, demanding that we need this access point. Because if there isn't, I would ask that you listen to our HOA, and we are in unity in saying that we do not want this access point put in. And I guess I hope you would respectfully consider my comments.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Seller. Appreciate your comments, and appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts with us there.
Good, thank you.
The next person on the list is Victoria Stevens. Thank you. And I'd like to state your address, if you would, please.
Yes.
And you have 3 minutes.
Okay, I am Victoria Stevens, and I live at 6509 86th Avenue West in Chambers Plateau as well. So I am writing this letter in opposition to the Chambers Creek Trail project as the president of the Chambers Plateau HOA and as a homeowner of 10 years in University Place. This project has a direct negative impact on our community's safety, accessibility to parking, and compromises the maintenance and enforcement of our community's rules. We just find this project to be unacceptable coming into our small neighborhood. The HOA discussed the Trailhead project as a neighborhood when it first arose, and our stance continues to remain against the project on 86th Avenue West. Some of our primary reasons for our community's opposition to the project include lack of parking along 86th Avenue West. The parking is limited to the east side of the street, and there are about 7 to 8 usable spaces for the owners of 18 homes. There is potential misutilization of the cul-de-sac fire lane. Oftentimes we do see cars parked there, and the no parking is not enforced, and we're not sure who would be policing that. Increased neighborhood congestion, fire truck zone compromise, therefore impacting safety, unauthorized use of our HOA's park area equipment and the liability of that, safety and maintenance impact, public enforcement compromises residents and safety of homeowners and our children, wear and tear on equipment, increased safety issues and maintenance, such as increased traffic on our street with only one inlet. Oftentimes people do not respect the speed limit, which is kind of high for that short street, and they whip around the cul-de-sac. Increased noise at all hours, increased litter with no plan for dealing with it that we're aware of, general enforcement concerns for our HOA's private equipment subject to public use, and increased risk associated with the growing number of unhoused encampments in the local area. When I last checked, there were 7 in the trail area, and they seem to be approaching our neighborhood, and so we're really concerned about having a segue into our neighborhood without any enforcement. Thank you for listening to our concerns. We hope you'll consider another location if there's to be a trailhead.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I appreciate your comments. Chris Rockins, is it? I may have mispronounced that. Please help correct it when you get up here. So you have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you. My name is Chris Rakunis. For the last 10 years, I've lived at 6508 86th Avenue West here in University Place. Lived here for just about a decade. Have really enjoyed living in University Place, but like the 2 previous speakers, I have a concern about the Chambers Creek Trail project, specifically the trailhead that's on 86th Avenue West. If you look at the county's own documents from the beginning of this project, they'll say this is not actually a good spot to have a trailhead. The slope down into the canyon is very steep. The street actually starts to go down before you hit the land where the trailhead is going to be, and it continues to go straight down. And if you look at the plan, it's just a straight slope down to get down to where the trail is going to meet up with it. There's also environmental issues with the runoff. The hillside there has a lot of water, so you have some watershed issues. And like the two previous speakers said, there are safety concerns. 10 years ago, we didn't have a homeless problem. We didn't have an opioid epidemic the same way we have now. But now on all sorts of pieces of open land in the state of Washington, there's encampments all over the place. We have a very small playground that's right next to where this trailhead is. I'd like to invite all of you to come and look at 86th Avenue West and go check this out so you can see it for yourself. It's the type of street that people move to UP for. We let our kids outside and play at this playground. We don't want to have a trailhead that's right there where people can come from encampments up into our neighborhood. It's not why people move here, right? To put your family in danger. It's not the type of thing that you want to have. People have also spoken about the parking situation. Right next to the trailhead is a fire lane. A few weeks ago, we actually had an accidental 911 call in our neighborhood, and a fire truck came down our street. It's very small and narrow, and when it got to the turnaround, the truck barely made it around there. If there are cars that are in the way, it will be a safety hazard. They won't be able to make turns if there's cars that are going to be in that fire lane. The last thing that I just want to say is, like I said, I invite you all to come and look at it yourselves. I'd love to take you down and show you what the neighborhood looks like and point out concerns so you can see it live in person. But I'd ask you to vote against having the trailhead at 86th Avenue West. The county has informed us that it's this body that makes the decision of where trailheads are in University Place. The county's not making the decision, that they said it is up to the University Place City Council, and that's why we're here to ask you all to make that decision. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate your comments, Mr. Hopkins. Then I have, let's see, I think that's everyone on the written list. Am I missing anyone? Anyone who signed up that I'm not seeing? Oh, okay. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Ian Scott. I'm here representing Heritage Christian School at 5412 67th Avenue West. I sent an email about a month ago to the City Council. We are a small Christian school that is a ministry of Tacoma Bible Presbyterian Church. We were started back in 1971 with a kindergarten and 6 students. Today we represent over 200 students and go through grade 8. I'm here as I was, encouraged to come to talk to the City Council about the crosswalk, or the hope thereof, spanning 67th Street. We were notified of the project for the sidewalks along there and asked what would we ask for. Parking, increased school safety signs with a decreased speed limit during those hours of pickup and drop-off, as well as a crosswalk to serve the families that live near us. We were denied that request, and in an email from Mr. Eklund, he mentioned that Charles Wright, that I mentioned in my email, had been in conversation with the city since about 2011. I've been at Heritage since 2015, and during my first year there, I reached out to the city to inquire around increased signage and crosswalks. I don't have the people that I was in contact with, but those were denied. So I'm here to ask for a crosswalk to be considered. I know there's an increased expenditure that wasn't originally in the budget with the proper signage, as well as the lights that would go along to accompany it, more than just two white lines that span 67th there. We have about a dozen students that will walk or bike, and families that will come across, as well as neighborhoods, families that will come to our campus to walk their pets and enjoy our facilities. So I would just humbly request a reconsideration of that, or consideration in the future. When our board president met with the planning committee when this sidewalk project, or excuse me, yes, the sidewalk project was mentioned, I think back in 2020, that was one of our first requests. So I thank you for your time, and Dr. Fleming, good to see you. I believe I served both your kids over at University Place when they're in youth ministry. So thank you.
Very good, Mr. Scott. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. We'll see if we can't have some conversation on that. Let's see. And I think that's everyone that signed up. Then if there's anyone who hasn't signed up that would like to speak, sir, would you like to come up and make a comment?
Thank you very much. My name is Bill Dickens. I reside at 6408 86th Avenue West, University Place. I am a thrice elected president of the Homeowners Association, where I proudly serve with my neighbors in back of me. I apologize. My written comments that I had planned to provide, I didn't get around to it because I was walking around Chambers Bay today and I got distracted with the beautiful weather and I never got to write those comments. But very briefly, because I thank you for your time, I'm here to express my opposition to the planned trail as well. Primarily because I would like to be a vicar in speaking in behalf of children. When I moved to this neighborhood 15 years ago, my kids were the only kids there. And now, thanks to a population explosion, we have a lot of beautiful children in our neighborhood. And I'm very much concerned about how this proposed project will impact on the quality of life of children under age 5, under age 3. So I'm just expressing my opposition because I am deeply concerned about the probability of malfeasance that could potentially arise and threaten the quality of life for these beautiful children. I'm an old fogey, but I still love children, and I just want to continue to remain in my neighborhood without that type of probability hovering over my head. Thank you for entertaining my thoughts.
Very good, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with us, too. Sometimes from the heart works just as well as the prepared speech. So, all right. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment to the City Council this evening in attendance this evening? And if not, we'll turn to folks online. And if you could help me there, do we see anyone online raising a hand or whatever?
Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised. We have two public who joined, but I don't think anyone wished to speak.
Very good. Well, with that in mind, I'm going to close our comment period for this evening, move on to the next item on our regular agenda. Comments are closed then. And for our next item, we'll consider the consent agenda. Is there a motion to, and I would entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. And is there a second for the consent agenda approval?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilmember Buklewski. And with that, are there any objections to the approval of the consent agendas as distributed? Any objections? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. That'll move us on to our city manager comments and followed by the city council comments. Mr. Sugg.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. We've concluded last week I believe a successful summer concert season. That was led by our city events coordinator, Marion Holloway, and her team, along with a number of supporting members of the staff and outside contractors. We had 7 concerts here on the square and 5 out at the current apple orchard. All were well attended, and we thank the weather folks providing excellent weather for all those events. We're going to take the month of September off because we're in planning for the Oktoberfest, which will happen on Friday, October 13th, from 5 to 9 p.m. here on Market Square. There'll be face painting and other activities for the kids. For the adults, there's a beer garden in place that will be there like there was last year. For those that attended last year, it was very successful. We had music and food trucks serving all kinds of seasonal treats and food. So with that, there'll be more information on our city website. But again, Friday, October 13th from 5 to 9. We have one more event after that, but I'll save that for later. But that's what's coming up in October. Again, and thank you for the council for supporting events. These community gatherings in University Place are very important. All these events, not only the concerts, but the Duck Days, National Night Out, Movie in the Park, they all go towards getting folks out and meeting their neighbors and others, and enjoying what is the quality of life in University Place. So with that, Mayor, I'm going to conclude my remarks.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Sugg, and appreciate excuse me, Marion's efforts along with the rest of the staff. It's been a fun-filled summer, so with lots of neat activities and music and a couple of different venues, and it's worked out very well. But we can move on to council comments. Councilmember Keel, would you like to start us with that?
Thank you, Mayor. Just very quickly, it's good to be back in town on the left side of the coast after being on the right side of the coast for almost a month visiting family. Wherever I was this time, as I told you before, I took the bad weather with me, so I was there and it was warm here and raining there. Now I'm back here, it's warm there, and now it's not so warm here. So I don't know what I did wrong, but I'm glad to be back in my own bed. So thank you.
Well, very good. Excellent. Good to have you back. And Councilmember Woods.
So a couple of comments. First, I've actually been there to 86th. I know exactly your cul-de-sac in your neighborhood, and I would be very interested to see how parking would happen there too, because I don't know how it could be done, frankly. But no, that's something we should be looking at going forward, and that's all I can really say about that right now. I'd like to welcome the 248th. Thank you for being here, participating as good citizens of our community. My son actually got his Eagle through 248 a couple years ago, so glad to see you here. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Well, very good. Thank you. It's great to have the scouts here with us this evening, and that's super. Maybe we'll have a chance to say hello here in just a moment. Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. My son also got his Eagle from Troop 248, and I'm really excited that you chose this governmental body to see the proceedings. It's nice to see the troop back. Sometimes they did flag ceremonies for us. A lot of projects in our city as well. So we appreciate all those extended efforts and thinking of University Place first as to your Eagle projects. So good luck to all of you on your journey to Eagle. I as well have been to 86th Street, the cul-de-sac, several times. I understand all of your concerns, and I'm sure we'll look into it. There's a lot of things that went into planning that, and so we'll see what mitigating issues are there. Okay. Typically, I don't comment with public comments, but parks are my where my heart is, and it should augment and, accent the well-being and livability of the community. The Adopters Harvest and the Harvest Fest at the Current Apple Orchard was a huge success. I went to the Adopters, and as our mayor did as well, and it was low-key fun and just great to see everyone get so excited about picking all the apples off the tree and squeezing it, and so it was a nice event. And the Harvest Festival that they had at Kern, which was just going in there and gleaning all the trees, had a huge turnout. I drove by there and looked over the fence, and everyone was having a good time picking and gleaning more apples. So I'm sure there's no apples left unless the tree was taped off. My last comment is in regards to what I have noticed, and I have received a couple other citizen comments to me, is graffiti that's been popping up in our city. So if our code enforcement officer could please look into that as soon as possible, because if it's on city property, I would like that to be immediately removed. And I'll conclude my comments. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say to the council, it's great to be back. It seemed like forever I was gone. But it's definitely good to be among the living, so thank you. I just want to say to the Boy Scouts, every time I see the troop, it just reminds me all the way back to the beginning of the city, all the projects that the Boy Scouts did and the projects that were done. And those examples are throughout the city, and they serve as a reminder for the great things that you all do as a troop. So, thank you for what you do for the community, and thank you for being with us tonight. I also want to say to the Chambers Plateau folks, thank you for being here tonight and sharing your thoughts. I didn't realize Brian Levenseller lived so close to me. But be that as it may, I appreciate your comments and the passion that you have, and I'm sure that we'll take a look at that. I do want to learn more about the Heritage School issue at some point, and I'll kind of defer to the city manager to kind of lead that conversation. I'm a little bit puzzled on that particular one. And then lastly, I want to echo Councilmember McCloskey's concerns about graffiti. I know in private conversations, we talked about the onesie-twosies, but now we seem to have this explosion in the city. I was really surprised when I drove towards Lakewood, and then we got that really nice metal wall with the fish that's been graffitied lately. So I know we've had this problem in the past, and our law enforcement folks were great in cracking down on it, and I'm really looking to, again, the city manager, the staff, and our law enforcement to get their arms around this, because just in the matter of, seems like days, but maybe a few weeks, this thing's just started to mushroom throughout the city. It's not the message nor the image we want to have for University Place. So I'm kind of imploring that we take a hard look at that one. Short of that, I do not have anything further, Mr. Mayor, so thank you.
Very good, Councilmember Fleming.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I know this is out of order, but just indulge me. With all this talk about the Boy Scouts and Troop 248, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I didn't make Eagle Scout. I was a Life Scout. Just barely shoot. I had a couple more badges for Eagle, but that was in 248.
Oh.
Yeah. So back in the 70s. I was in 248, Life Scout.
All right. Well, good. I have a message for the Scouts, too, in a moment. But that's, it's the same troop number.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, same
Cool.
troop number.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, a couple of quick comments on my part. I did have the opportunity with Councilmember McCluskey and a whole bunch of volunteers to participate in the Adopters Harvest or Pick at the Current Apple Orchard, and it was a great turnout, and it worked out. It's a little different program this year than they've done in the past, but I thought it worked out very well. And it was sort of a special benefit for the adopters, and anyone can adopt a tree, and there's a couple of different levels you can adopt from, gosh, I think it's under $50 to up to about $90. And people, I think, a lot of folks seem to enjoy that, and they have their own tree, and they can make that a family activity. It works out well. It's been a good summer. We did pause this, as council knows and as the staff knows, we did not have our regular second meeting in August, and we're sort of trying that out. And so if the council members or the public have any comments about that they would like to share, I certainly would be happy to hear any feedback about that and such. Just to see how that went in everyone's mind. With that, I was going to use the prerogative of the chair. I don't do this very often, but with our scout troop here, I thought we might take a brief 5-minute break, get a chance to say hello to these folks. Maybe they'd like to come up and get a picture on the dais or something like that. And so with that in mind, I'd like to recess until about 7:05. So.
It's 7 o'clock.
Well, 7:05.
Call to order the September 5th, 2023 UP Council meeting from a recess, and we'll now move on to our study session, where Jack Eklund is going to be helping us discuss the surface water management fee update. And Jack is just now coming in the room with the latest figures hot off the printer. So we'll be able to get all the fresh fees right here. So thank you, Mr. Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm Jack Eklund, Director of Public Works, and also joining me tonight on Teams is Roger Kuykendall from Gray and Osborne Engineering, and so he'll be available to answer some questions. There, you can see Roger there. And let me pull up the deal here. Oh, my, a little bit. There we go. Thank you. It's not 1985 anymore. Okay, so I think for this, Emmy, do I just do a share screen then, if it's on this one? And then go ahead, enlarge it, and do from...
While you were working on that,
All right, here we go.
we just mentioned to the folks in the audience that you're welcome to stay, but you don't have to stay. That's up to you. So.
Thank you.
Yes, we do.
All right, so a little bit, so what we're bringing for you tonight, I think we mentioned, is our study for update to the city's surface water management fee. A little bit of a background, our surface water management fee, or what we often refer to as our SWIM fee, is an annual utility charge that's assessed to all properties, which essentially pays for the costs associated with running our managing the stormwater in the city. It's a cost-based fee model, and it includes all the operational, administrative, and capital costs needed to manage stormwater and also meet our obligations under our state and federal obligations under our NPDES permit. The current fee itself is right now $191.15 per single family home. Now that is subject to I think we have that standard utility tax, the 6%. So if you see your bill, it's slightly more. I think it's $202 what you see in your bill, but that's after that tax gets assessed to it. The last time this fee was updated for inflation was in 2005. And then we did do an increase in 2008, but that was a programmatic increase, accounting for costs that were coming into play with the new MTS permit, which came out in 2007, but no inflation adjustment that had happened. If this fee had been adjusted or were to be adjusted just for inflation, that would be a fee of about $292.61. That's just, the model itself is a cost per, how much it costs versus how many people are paying into it. So that's not necessarily the fee what it would be, but it's just a reference point for you to know what it would be if we were to continue. Let's see with my next one here. One thing with our fee, and this is very small to see, so I may actually just skip through this. I can pull it up a little later. But when we look at our cost projection, if we project out our current fee this is from our budget document. By 2005, our surface water management fund starts to go negative. So in 2005, the ending fund balance is negative $126,000, and it just piles on after that point. And we also don't have in our with that model, we have zero capital costs. We've zeroed out. We're not doing any capital improvements, which we're required to do some, but that's with our current model. So hence the need for adjusting where we're at. To do a comparison of the different groups, so we looked at all of the our neighbors around Pierce County. I believe this is every agency within, I believe, a 12-mile radius of University Place. And I know, see, the last time when, so you can see right here, we are near the bottom. So Lakewood is at 128, but then we're essentially tied for second lowest at 191. This is all based on a single family rate. And then it ranges going up to $351 per residential that Tacoma has. There's two asterisks on this that both Gig Harbor and Milton, they have a variable rate structure, and actually I think Fife does too, but only with respect to commercial. But for in their residential areas, both of those cities have a range, and so we've placed them on the chart essentially at their mid-range point, but it's based on the size of the lot, where all the other agencies for single-family residents have an assumed a single average rate for single-family. So, moving on here. So now, part of where we are, as this is a cost-based model. So right now, as you guys are aware, we're in the process of updating our comprehensive storm drainage plan, and we've contracted with Gray and Osborne and Roger to do update our plan. A major part of that is looking at both the capital costs, what is needed to, what's our needed projects we need to complete just for managing stormwater, and also meeting our NPDES requirements, as well as some operational costs, some additional costs needed to manage those, the NPDES, the state mandated and federal mandated requirements from that. In general, and I'll show you some detail more on that, but that is roughly included about the capital program that's included in that is a $10 million capital program, as well as identified a programmatic need for about 3 additional staff members to be able to handle the workload. So based on this information and the financial forecast that we have, we've built a financial model for identifying what's the needed fee, what we would need to do. And right now in the PowerPoint I have just kind of static, but afterwards I can shift to the actual Excel, and we can kind of I can show you how, the dynamic of the model of things get adjusted, what that means for different rates, things. So anyway, so how our rate and how most of the other neighbors do their rates, you either do it as a equivalent residential unit, or you have a base rate of a little bit for a previous area, and then you create an average unit. But essentially, it's the exact same model. It's just which way how you name it mostly for commercial. So like for some of the folks, will just say, okay, our average residential square foot in previous area is 2,600 square feet. And so then they have a rate of whatever that is, and then for commercial properties, that rate is applied for every 2,600 square feet of that impervious area. Our rate is, we divide it a little bit because we do give a break for gravel, where other folks will count gravel as impervious. We give about a 50% discount for if it's a gravel on a lot. So we use the like 7 cents per impervious the area, but from a comparison standpoint, it's easier just to talk about it in terms of what a single family rate is. Comparison. So our current fee is $191, like we talked about. If we had adjusted it for inflation all the way, we would be at $292. This would equate just our base rate. Our base fee then is about a little over 15,000 equivalent residential units throughout the city. We look at what our operating costs are. So we have about $2 million in operational costs. That's in both maintenance and engineering operations for both maintaining our stormwater system and implementing our NPDS program. We also have about $780,000 administrative costs in there for administration. I've shown in here, I kept them out separately just to show those additional staffing needs in the calculation, which would be 2 public works staff and 1 NPDS staff. And then there's also associated with the NPDS permit and increased operational costs, both of like equipment and so forth, but fuel and so forth, but about a $50,000 increased operational costs that we're going to be seeing in this next going on in accordance with our NPDS permit. And then the capital costs are $1.2 million, and these are all per 1 year, or averaged over a year. And this model itself is a 20-year model, but this shows the single calculation for a single year. So then we show our annual costs, what we need to implement our program. Then we do have a modest amount of non-fee revenue associated with stormwater, and so that includes, we have a mapping fee we have. We also have been getting about a $25,000 a year on average grant from the Department of Ecology. And then for our equipment, we do, on average, our equipment surplus is maybe about 10% of what our the new is. So it's around an average $25,000 a year, give or take, for surplus for swim-related equipment. So we have a total annual non-fee revenue about $50,000. So then basically you just subtract that from the original cost to come up with what is the fee-based cost that we need to have. And then it's simple. You just take that number and divide it by your unit. So what your unit for payment is. So it's your, in this case, the equivalent residential unit of that $15,000. So the next number you see there in blue, this is what the rate would be.
15,000 square feet is the equivalent residential unit, is that what you just
It's
said?
about a little over 2,600 is our average. 26 something or other.
2,600 square feet?
It's 2,600 square feet of impervious area is
Okay.
what we have. It's 26 and some change. It's
Okay, thank you.
how we got to 26 and some change. I think that it came with our original comp plan, I believe, but that's where we're at. But I did do a review, and that is comparable with what other plus or minus 100 square feet is typical what we're seeing from around the area. So if we did just by a base swim fee, if we did the swim fee with the full cost, it would be $288.36 per year for residential. And then I just added, just so we know what the position does, it's about a $9 difference. So let's say if we funded 2 positions, that would drop the fee, instead of 3 positions, that would drop it down to $279. Now another thing that many other jurisdictions are adopting is what's called a system development charge.
So could you go back to the positions? So is that subtracting 2 positions or adding 2 positions? Because the number's smaller with the 2 positions.
So the first one is 3 position. That's
Okay,
called.
got
So in the Great Osborne analysis, it showed that we are three positions short. And this is just, let's say, if we did 2 positions and identified, well, we'll have to figure out how to backfill that with existing, I guess. But probably the need would be still in the future. But if we're looking at ways to shave it down.
So then that title, in my mind, would have said swim fee minus 1 position instead of 2.
Probably,
Okay,
yeah.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
But we're not losing positions. That would still be adding 2 positions to the overall staff, but that's instead of 3.
I'm with you now. Thank you.
So then another thing that many jurisdictions are doing is what's called a system development charge. And
Yes, we may. So would you like to ask questions? Let's do that.
okay,
All right.
sure.
You want to go first, Mr. Fleming?
Sure. I'm sorry. Councilmember Fleming?
Here you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be quick. Councilor. I got a bunch of questions, so I'll try to run through them as quickly as
Yeah.
possible. Starting with, I'm still not clear about adding more positions.
And I'll show the sheet on that one.
Okay.
But yeah.
Because I've heard we need a position, but I didn't hear why we need positions.
Yep, and I have that as I can bring up both, that one's going to be easier to see in Excel, and so
Okay.
I have to bring that separately because similar to that other one
Okay.
if I,
I'll be patient
in
on
there.
that one. But Jack, what are we not doing right now with our current rates? What is it that we are not doing that we need the additional funding other than these positions?
so the biggest part is we haven't, it's a cost-based model that is based in 2005 dollars. So that's the biggest thing. So it's not, that part it just doesn't function. So right now, as of 2023, in our budget line item, we only have, from the cost base, there's only, after you just do operational costs, there's only $200,000 available for equipment, combined for equipment and capital costs, for any kind of physical things we have to do out in the street. So if we have to fix a catch basin or put something new in, clean out a pond, we have $200,000 per year. That goes away to negative, and that actually, by 2025, we now are not only, we have zero for operational costs, and for capital costs, and we're running $125,000 deficit just in operational costs for our stormwater program. So that's our so the biggest hole, though, is really just, it's based on right now, $2,005, and
Sure.
it's gone up 50-some% in the
You know,
inflation.
and I get that part of it, but you know, when I put on my business hat, I also realize that not everything, when it comes to the cost of doing business, is necessarily directly dollar for dollar in inflation. So, you know, when I hear the story about, well, you know, in $2,005, this is, you know, we're not keeping pace, it just doesn't compute in my head from a business perspective that it doesn't necessarily have to, because some things are inflationary, some things are not, and some things are deflationary, you know, as we do business. You know, just doing the math, and I always tell folks in our company, just do the math. This is a 65% increase on the taxpayers from what you're proposing if we did the three positions. That's
if we did the
steep.
And once again, we haven't finished my deal.
I know.
It's still high. My recommendation is going to be a little bit less than
Okay,
that, but-
so I appreciate that, because so I'll put that on the table
So
for
keep
now.
that as your high there. That's,
You know, when I look at 65% jump, it's like, convince me, okay? Because that's the starting point for me on that
Yeah.
one, okay? But thank you.
Councilman Plesky, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. So I was looking at the additional staffing, the public works staff that you need to add for the swim. 260K, is that for one position?
That's two positions.
Two positions. Okay,
So that's on average with benefits and so forth. That's
so
the
this will be
average
three
cost kind of
positions
thing.
there. In addition, we already have one dedicated NPDES staff person now.
We currently, this would show that, it shows that we should have a second one. But if for say, we didn't implement the full deal and we didn't, when I'm assuming on the alternate fee of just doing the two position, that would still have the priority on the maintenance spots. But the NPDS one would be the one that we'd have to then program for. It's like, well, if we can't afford it right now, that maybe has to be down the road or something. But that would be the one to be cut first if we needed to.
Currently, the person that we have that's dedicated to this is part-time?
Oh, he's full-time right now.
Full-time now,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
And I'll show, when I pull up the other one, I can show what the assumptions for the different staffing for the different positions. But the administrative, actually, it's from the engineering side, it's not just the one full-time position. There's also about a half-time overall currently with between development engineering and general engineering also. So it's really 1.5 of NPDS implementation from the engineering side. And then there's, I think it's like 4.5 of FTE dedicated to swim right now for street maintenance.
Okay, so we're running short right now. So where's the shortage? What funds are we paying for the swim currently? You know, where's the dollars coming out of now?
Yeah, currently, so back in, well, even as early as 2008, We were projecting that with NPDES permits that they were going to be requiring us to start doing more capital improvements. And we've been fortunate that it's not until this next permit cycle that they're requiring it. We were expecting it the previous permit cycle. And so we had been, for several years, putting off doing a lot of capital projects. We were still doing the little kind of just squeak by and using some of the swim to pay for like some of our street project, the storm, for when we're doing those, but we hadn't done a lot of major capital storm projects for many years. I think about 3 years ago when we started doing some more of those again, 3 or 4 years ago. Actually, with the pandemic, that blurs together. But shortly before the pandemic, we started doing some of those again, just because we got to the point we couldn't ignore it anymore. But that allowed us to build a bit of a reserve, and so that's what we have been essentially living on the last several years. Is we have a reserve that had been built up because we were trying to conservatively plan for these requirements that come in. Unfortunately, that reserve gets burned up by this year, and so, or by next year, and so then by 2025, we're operating in the negative with zero equipment and zero capital.
Okay. And so this is for the single family. That's your gauge for the
That's
increase
that's
right now.
that's the way to compare it. Yeah.
And you briefed a little bit on the commercial part of it. What do you foresee as the projected dollar amount that we'd get from our commercial?
I'll show. I have a slide that kind of does a little bit of a comparison for some of our various commercial uses out there, and it is, especially for the larger one, it is a significant fee, and I don't want to sugarcoat that. That it definitely is a big impact for that, and but I can kind of show you both, kind of a range of what I think the things I picked, like a commercial lot like a Dairy Queen versus a commercial lot like a Fred Meyer. That's kind of a
I like,
spectrum.
also the aggregate dollars from the commercial. What is that bottom line going to add to when you get to your presentation, if you have that noted or not, or you can.
That one may be trickier to find, but I can ask the county. The county collects our fees.
Okay.
But I can find that out, I'm sure. But
because this bottom line here, the 4 million, that's not included in the commercial.
no, that does. That includes everything.
That's everything.
Yeah. So what we've done is take the
Commercial
revenue and
and-
I've normalized the commercials to a single-family equivalency. So like a Fred Meyer is 10 single families or something like that. But anyway.
We sort of stopped Jack in sort of midstream at this point, so there's some things we hasn't had a chance to
Okay.
get to quite yet.
Well, just so you know what I'm thinking, and also the range that you're proposing for the single family, there's like a $12. You'll clarify that as we go along?
Yeah, so it depends on where it is at, but so currently the 191, so it's about a $90 per year increase, depending in that ballpark, depending on the range of things.
Okay.
It may be a good time to kind of talk about the next step that we're looking at, and that's.
I have one more set of questions for
Yeah,
you.
go ahead.
If Councilmember McCluskey's done, so. Councilmember McCluskey, any further questions?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, all right. Councilmember Wood.
Yeah.
So as a news guy, I get to ask the really dumb question. When and how is this fee assessed?
So it is assessed, so in University Place, what we do is we've contracted with the county, and they assess it at the same time as property taxes are collected. And so you can either pay it at annually, or you could do it half and half, semi-annually. I believe Lakewood does it that way, and potentially Stillicum, I'm not sure, but most other jurisdictions actually do a separate utility bill that they charge people a storm fee monthly, but that might be maybe.
So when people see their assessment from the county, the $5,000 or $6,000, whatever it is, dollars it happens to be, that includes this particular fee?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So if this fee changes, then their assessment will go up?
Go up by $80 or whatever it is.
Okay, got it. Related to that then, and I don't know if you know the answer to this question, when we do a property tax incentive for a large commercial apartment building here, does that fee get waived too, or is it just the property tax component?
That's just the property tax.
Just the property tax component, the fee is
Yeah.
still included, and that's paid. And then finally, one last question. You mentioned tiers for Milton and Gig Harbor. What do they tier based on?
They do it based on the size of the, well, yeah, it's all based on the size of the lot, basically. One is the intensity of impervious area on the lot, and the other one is size of the, I think, but it's basically magnitude of what your residential structure is. So if you have a really, really big house, then they would pay a higher rate than the smaller.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
That's
Jack.
all my
Well,
questions.
thank you. And I think we've had a chance to sort of get the first wave of questions
Yeah.
out. I'd like to invite you to continue on, and we'll get ready for wave 2.
Okay, so this next part is something a little different, although it is something that other utilities have used for many years, and that's a system development charge, or also you can kind of think of it as like a connection or hookup charge. But basically, it is a charge that many of our neighbors are doing now, that when a development happens, basically growth is now paying for not just what they have to do, but their future stuff, but they're now paying into what the other ratepayers, the existing system that's available to them. And so an example of some of our neighbors, the range that we're seeing out there, like Stillicum has a rate that it's about $325 per residential unit for this system charge. And then you could go, I think Gig Harbor is around $1,700 and Puyallup is around $4,000, which may be why Puyallup in that previous slide was, near the bottom of things as well. How that state law allows that, basically, they set what your maximum charge can be, and then you can do anything less than that maximum charge. It basically takes what your system costs are, divided by your existing users and your growth, plus your new capital projects divided by just the growth. And so that creates your maximum, which for University Place, we could charge up to around $1,500 per residential unit, basically when a permit is applied for. That level itself for a new home may not be too daunting. I would have serious concerns on a commercial project if that type of assessment, if it were made. And when I bring up the spreadsheet, we can kind of show you what that does for various folks. But I would, in looking at it, I kind of like the model that Stillicum has, that is closer to it's close to what their annual fee is. So like the Stillicum fee is about $300, so their connection fee is $325. For us, if we were to implement, say, a connection fee of $280, that would lower the fee by about $280, lowers it about $4 a year per property. But that's a way to mitigate that ongoing cost and still recover, make your fee model solvent. Because ultimately, this really is just, this is how much things cost, and this is the amount of people we have to pay for those things. Right? That's what it all comes down to. So that's just another way to do it. We could, from a straight face test, I think, you could go up to like about a 550 if we wanted to, and that wouldn't be overly burdensome, and that would lower the fee a bit too. And we can play with that, but right now, for conversation's sake, I put in something in the ballpark of what would be a potential fee. And then it shows on the bottom, then the fee would either be if you did a $280 connection fee, then you'd be at $284 and some change. If you did the full program, or $275, which would be just adding the 2 positions, not the 3, which that puts us in if you look at our neighbors, that's in the range of that's right in the range between Fife and, it's in the ballpark of Fife and Stillicum kind of thing. And it would still be within the range of the upper level of Gig Harbor, but so moving on to commercial comparison. So what does the fee do with commercial properties? And So this is kind of a range. I have 4 different properties that have varying rates. Fred Meyer, they currently they pay an annual fee of about $22,000. Now, one thing that's factored in there, if you notice, their rate is a little less than everybody's, and that's because Fred Meyer infiltrates their water, and so they get a storm credit. So this is with the credit applied. And I'll talk about some of the credits we offer with our program as well. But, so if
Jack,
we were to go...
Just
yeah.
quick question. Do credits, Fred Meyer, do they do the maintenance of their storm facilities
Yeah,
themselves?
so the
thank you.
credits, they qualify it if they meet certain operational functions, but then also have to demonstrate their maintenance and clean. And Fred Meyer is one of our better, they're always right on top of it and maintaining their stuff. So this is just a comparison based on that if we were to do the modest system development charge. So with that, it's still around a 50% increase of the rate. And so their rate would go up about $11,000 to $33,000 a year. And then that's, when we get into the spreadsheet a little bit more, we can kind of look at maybe there's options. If we have to get to this rate, maybe there's ways to step it. Albertsons, although on face value you'd think Albertsons is as big, if not bigger than Fred Meyer, but because they have several other, you have the Cornerstone building, you have the Applebee's, you have the apartments back there. So they are a little smaller. They do pay the full rate though, because they don't have a storm system that would qualify. So their rate is $15,000 a year, and the fee, associated fee for them would go up to about $22,000. Looking at some newer, like an apartment complex, something we're seeing around here. So you have the Larson Apartments across the way, just the one with the big L behind where Burger King used to be. And so their annual fee right now is about $4,600, and they would go up to about $6,800 a year. And then looking at more of an average dairy, like small commercial, like a Dairy Queen type of lot, they're paying about $1,600 a year, and then they would go up to $2,400, or that ballpark. So that just gives you a range of where we are with those. Now, one thing to think about on the system development charge, that is still relative to what your existing system is. So, like if Fred Meyer were to be built today, going from grass to all impervious, this would be a pretty significant charge. And so I think if we did the higher limit, it would be, $250,000 or something crazy. But the lower one is probably, I have that, we can show that. But there are very few instances where you're going from nothing to fully impervious. So,
Jack, question for you quickly on that one. On Fred Meyer going to $250,000 if they built it today, would they pay for the physical improvement as well?
They would, but that's if we did the $1,500 fee.
But so they would also have to build the improvement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's part of why I don't think the $1,500 passes. I mean, state law allows us to go that high. It doesn't feel right to me. And I know Roger had brought this up too, that we require all new development to mitigate their storm. And so it seems, I think it's appropriate to have them buy into the existing system. I think for future growth and all that, it feels onerous to the new to have that. And that's why I think the range should be somewhere between the existing fee and about $550 is really the brackets we should look at. Anything past that, I think is even legal, but
appreciate that.
Doesn't feel right.
Yeah, Councilmember Keel had a question.
Great, real quick, thank you, Mayor. Do you have to use the same fee structure for both residential and commercial?
You don't have to. Everybody does, with the exception of Tacoma. Tacoma has a varying fee structure where they have, and they do it for commercial. It is based on backup. I think also Fife does it a little bit different for commercial as well. So the way Fife does it is they have based on the commercial use intensity. So if it's a heavy, like industrial use, they pay a higher rate versus a lighter, lighter commercial use. But
Yeah.
most general commercial would fall within the, not heavy, but moderate or whatever.
Yeah, and the reason for my question is you made a statement in your discourse there that said, and I couldn't track, there was one fee structure that sound like you said would be better for commercial, and another would be better for residential, but they were two different. And I'm just wondering if we could
Yeah.
use whatever's better for whatever type of.
From what I can tell for Fife, their model generally still tries to capture the impervious area, and so it is fairly equally assessed. It just is capturing densities and so forth. The Tacoma model is a little more weighted toward the residential, and that's why they're way higher than everybody else. And so they essentially, they do, because their calculations are completely different, they do a little bit subsidize their commercial with their residential. They have a deal where they have a minimum charge per commercial, and then depending on the use, they have tiers of various things.
Yeah.
It's a much more complicated model for theirs, but they are kind of on a limb for what they do. But
Yeah.
there are ways to look
Yeah,
at it.
my interest would be to have a structure that's beneficial to the category of citizens, businesses, but also fits the bill of that covers our costs too as well, if that's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this one I'm not going to really, this shows, this will go in detail more when I have I'm going to show you the spreadsheet so we can zoom in, but go a little bit over what we offer for credits, because that's just the base fee, but we do have credits. The most significant ones, we do have credits for low income, both senior and disabled populations. So that ranges between 40 and 80% credit to your swim fee. And those are all based on the what the median household income is compared to the state. I believe if they're at, the tiers are 50, 60, and 70%. So it's set, if you have a senior or disabled household and they make 70% of the Pierce County median income, then they would qualify for the 40% fee credit, where if they were at 50% of the median income, they would get the 80% of the credit, and we have 3 tiers for that. There's another credit that we have. It's called a system development credit, and this is something if a development were to, an existing development were to go out and improve a storm system that not only benefited them, this would not be like in new development, this would be existing neighborhood, to go out, do some investment by the neighborhood to improve a storm system that also has benefits to the system, the overall storm system as a whole, then they get a credit. So an example of this was a few years back, the Danbridge neighborhood did some improvements where they mitigated some flooding, but also helped manage other deals. So those residents are taking advantage of that credit. And then the final credit is the one that we talked a little bit about, like Fred Meyer has, and that's the facility credit. And so that's based on facility performance and maintenance. We do need to, whatever we do with the update, I believe we should update what the criteria for those credits are. Right now, those are based in a storm drawer analytical methodology that's no longer used. And so we just need to update that to current criteria, kind of equivalent to what the intent was, but then also to one of the things with our NPDES permit, we should be, we need to be encouraging what's called low impact development mitigation with storm drainage, which is basically trying to decrease the amount of water that's coming off your site to the system by either infiltrate or evaporate or something like that. And so we need to add a tier in there for the low impact development as well. Let me now, I am going to, Roger, do you want to, I've talked a lot right now. While I'm pulling up the spreadsheet, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you did with identifying some of our capital projects and also the cost assumptions and all that?
Sure, I can do that. Are you going to put the table 4 up there with the maintenance costs?
Yeah, I will.
Is that what you're going to start with?
Sure.
Jack, when you get that up there, just be aware there's no way we are going to be able to read that from here.
It might be. Let's see. Can you see it? I can zoom in on certain things.
Good.
It's quite small, but let me zoom, make it a little bigger. Well, Roger, kind of talk it. So on one side we have our various, you can kind of see these are, let me zoom in a little bit more probably.
I think that's fine. I don't think I'd zoom in too much more.
So you can kind of see we went through each, there's a list of all the activities broken out per storm drainage element. Is that right, Roger?
Yeah, in the recent years with the NPDS permits that have been issued for phase 2 for since 2008, I think it was, Ecology has been requiring cities to better track their maintenance costs, and so over the years when we've been developing plans for our clients, we sit down with them and we go through all the different activities that they do and how much time they spend doing it. And a lot of it has to do with your inventory. You'll see there in column B, the city's got over 4,500 catch basins and manholes.
Yikes.
And those are required by NPDS to be inspected at least every other year. And if they need to be cleaned or repaired, they need to be cleaned and repaired at, when you discover that they need to be. And then you have 450,000 lineal feet of storm drain pipe of various sizes, materials, and age and condition. And, the entire value of your system is somewhere $100 million maybe. And that would include, that would be the replacement cost, not the original cost. And that would include, utility conflict resolution and clearing and grading and asphalt repair and traffic control and all those things that go with a capital project to replace a piece of infrastructure. So there's a lot of money in the ground, and that these all require maintenance. And so you've got to jet your pipes and inspect them. I would say that most cities do.
Oh, we lost you there. You still there, Roger?
A poor job of it. They take inspection. Hello?
So
You might be on,
I think you're back with us.
you might mute maybe?
Well, I'm gonna.
There we go. Now you're good.
Cancel my I'm gonna cancel my video to see if that helps with the throughput.
Okay. So we last heard you were talking about many agencies do a poor job, and then we didn't hear anything after that.
Yeah, yeah, that wasn't the end of the sentence. Yeah, most agencies do a pretty good job of cleaning catch basins and pipes, but they do a poor job of inspecting them internally, which requires closed circuit cameras that you run down into the pipes to do the inspection. But there are, you also have mowing, you've got, repairs of fence around stormwater ponds, you've got sediment removal, control structures and catch basins inside detention facilities need to be maintained. Water quality, the proprietary treatment vaults that have special proprietary mechanisms in there for treatment have to be regularly maintained in order for them to work properly. And so what we did is we developed the inventory for the city, and then we went through based upon many jurisdictions that we've talked to about how long it takes to clean something or to inspect something, and we just ran the numbers, and you know it's basically how often do you do it, how many do you have, how much time does it take, how many people does it take, and then you get a number of hours for each one of those tasks.
So like right here, and although we're zoomed in, so it's the top ones are the catch basins. So we have it set up, we're doing it 3/4 of them are a year. It takes, this second one is cleaning. So it takes like 12 minutes on average to clean out a catch basin. This is about 5 minutes or something for just inspecting it. It takes 2 people to do it, so you have that factored in there. And then this is just the multiplication of the how many people times how long it takes times how often you do it in a given year. And so then for each element, as you can go down, depending on the units, so you have the total hours as you go down, and then it comes up with, I want to move this over here, the total maintenance hours needed, and these are all, like Roger said, they're kind of all the elements that you need to do to meet your frequencies according to your NPDES permit.
And this gives rise to you being short 2 staff people?
3.
3 staff people.
Because I have in here also the, not only is it the maintenance, but I also have the NPDES implementation, which has our business source control inspections, the stormwater facility, the private stormwater facility inspections are, every time we have to investigate illicit discharges and like dumping complaints, general just citizen response, our GIS support, operation facility training, development engineering, enforcement actions, that sort of thing. So in that model, we have it assumed at, so this is the total hours. If you look at based on how many hours are attributed, that comes about 9 people currently. We have 4.5 existing maintenance FTE, which is on average basically about half their time right now is dedicated to stormwater management. We currently have 1 full-time NPDES person, and also we have, through a combination of other engineering folks, equivalent of about a half FTE of development engineering, whether it's our permit reviewer or inspector or me sometimes.
So Jack, 15 years ago when this rate was initially established in 2005, did we have enough money to pay for the staff time that it was? We were collecting enough to do the job? And
so back in 2005, it was before NPDES started, so a number of those frequencies were much less of what was kind of accepted as industry standard. And so we had, it was based on the cost and the model, and in 2005, we've been keeping up with cost of construction costs. And then in 2008, we did implement some programmatic operational costs, which was reflected basically one additional NPDES, one additional employee, and some additional, like we have some public education costs and some general consulting costs that are programmed in. So that was accounted for in 2008, but nothing from we didn't account for additional maintenance requirements. And a lot of those are coming in, came in this current permit cycle, and then even more come in this next permit cycle.
of course, we've had growth. The system has grown. There's been more facilities, more miles of street, more miles of pipe.
Yep.
Okay. So that's just the challenge that we have with rates that have been flat since 2008 and really previously.
Yep.
Okay.
And then, Roger, anything else you want to talk about on this? Or you guys have any questions on this? I guess.
So Roger's getting queued up. Councilmember Fleming has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jack, when we're all looking at how do we contain costs and provide services, help me understand, because we're looking at a potential of addition of 2 or 3
People.
individuals. Educate us on why it takes 2 individuals to look at a catch basin.
Sure. So that's a good example. So every time we look at our catch basin, we go out there and we inspect it, and we try to inspect it with our we inspect it with our full Vector crew, because ideally, if we go there and we see it's dirty, we don't have to then we can immediately clean it and address it right away. Where the alternative would be to have somebody go out there, inspect everything, and then have someone come out to all the locations again to then which ones have to be cleaned. Because generally, more often than not, something has to be cleaned. So when you have the full Vector crew, you need 2 people there to make sure you're safely operating it, both for kind of make sure the equipment's running and the person manning the hose, and also an extra set of eyes for just making sure you're not, stepping
So
in
it's
the
not
wrong place.
necessarily inspection as it is maintenance?
For that one, the inspection of that one is, the reason I have 2, that's to inspect the catch basin. And even though that's 2 people, but it's only 5 minutes, if we were 1 person going around, then actually our inspection time, or our clean time would probably go up, because the amount of time for the inspection is kind of add those together. If they had to go out just to specifically clean it, you're probably at the 0.28 or something, it'd be the same thing. So that's, but then if we look at, say, inspecting here's an example, stormwater facility inspection. So right now we have it shown as about 1.5 people, and that's just because it depends on the complexity of the stormwater facility. So if it's a relatively modest stormwater facility that's like say, for example, the small development that's near your house, the one that was built about 10 years ago or so, they have a small, like a rain garden swale type of thing on the side. That type of facility would be somewhere 1 person would go out and inspect.
Okay.
But if you're looking at like a Harvest Ridge type of pond that had multiple things and different things going on, that maybe has more people, 2 people maybe, depending on what's going on. So we try to have an average of what it typically takes.
Okay, so it's not fair to assume then if we had 2 new employees versus 3, that half of these wouldn't get inspected, because this is just averaging out
Yeah.
their time.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. That got to your point, and Councilmember Wood has a question as well.
Okay, just a couple quick things here. First, on the frequency, for example, you had a 0.75, I think, for inspecting the drains or the manhole covers. I can't remember which one it was.
Yes.
Is that 0.75 mandated? Because I thought I heard you say it was once every 2 years, which would be like a 0.5.
So it's tricky, because
Okay.
Prior to this next permit cycle, it's been every 2 years. And this is one thing that we try to do, hold to this higher level, because we do kind of feel that by doing it more often, it reduces the burden on your storm pond cleaning, because you're cleaning up the stuff before it gets there. However, with the new next permit cycle that starts in '25, we're required, and we have basically 2 storm drainage basins, and one of our basins we have in there that we're going to be looking at 100% of those every year. And so that's why I have the 0.75. So we have the minimum requirement for half of the city is still half, and the other half is 100%. So that's what I have there.
So there's no option to like go to 0.6 or something like that? At least not one that would make sense at this point.
It could be. We didn't.
Okay, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to look at that. The second question really quick then is, back to Larson Apartments, if I read that right, they're currently paying a fee of $4,621 a year.
Say it again.
Larson Apartments?
Okay, yeah.
They're
Yes,
currently
okay.
paying a fee of $4,621 a year. How many units is in that apartment? I looked it up online, but it doesn't show the number of units.
I don't remember off the top of my head. They're around, I think Larson Apartments is 150, 200, something like that. Yeah. Oh, is it that low? Oh, 80 then. That might be
Okay,
right.
so let's say 80. I'm just trying to figure out what it is per, how that fee gets broken out then.
For them, it's just our straight impervious area calculation. So they have, and I have I'll bring that, I can show you that. But the impervious area is, let me pull that up, actually, might as well do it here. The impervious area they have is Larson Apartments. They have a impervious area around 63,000, and then they have a rate currently of 7 cents per thousand per impervious square foot.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. And Jack, I'm going to look for an opportunity for us to sort of to put a stop on this issue, just because we do have a few more things in front of us yet this evening. So if you have a place that in the near term here where you think is a good chance for us to stop, and then we can come back and revisit this at the next available study session.
Well,
Mayor?
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay. I just have a comment for, the presentation. It would be great if I had a hard copy of it, so I could see comprehensively how the numbers flex, and
I think
I didn't get it in my packet, or
No,
and
everything you showed is not in it.
even on my tablet, it's like
the site, what was printed
right, and
was,
then you enlarge it, and
Yes,
it's
not here.
not all that.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Part of
when
it's
you
like a
enlarge
projection,
something
but-
like this, you lose the clarity
Yeah.
because of the columns that you're not seeing.
Yeah, it absolutely, Councilmember, of course, is right. And so, frankly, we don't have the benefit of seeing that screen. We have a screen that is 56 feet away to read from.
I thought I think we have the sheet in the packet, though, don't we?
Yeah, my comment was, when you expand it.
It's hard to see.
Yeah.
Okay. It's tricky because it's quite large, a lot of data in it is
And then
challenging.
without your verbal explanation, sometimes it's just numbers.
Yeah.
Until it makes sense.
And that's the challenge.
Okay.
I think just kind of quickly show what our various inputs are real quick, and then we can kind of think about what other questions we might have. But so if we look at this sheet here, and it's still quite small, so let's zoom in. So this is our capital project. So we have right now on average of the capital program. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 projects have been identified as needed to be constructed to meet our MPS requirements in the next 20 years. Those projects, if you take them on average by 20 years, that comes up about 500,000. In addition, we have a certain percentage of our regular street projects that, in addition, we have storm improvements that are needed there. And what we've assumed in that case is the projects that have storm elements, we are assuming 86.5% grant funded for those, since historically that's what we're seeing. And about half of the match we're assuming is being funded by REIT, half of it by SWIM. We also have, there's a couple $100,000 here, one for just CIP and one for neighborhood CIP, which are kind of unforeseen situations that we typically see a given year about storm drainage costs that come up. And then we have, because of part of where we've been putting things off for a lot of years, we now have a pretty high need for both sediment removal and vegetation removal in our ponds. And so those are $50,000 on average a year needed kind of going in the next 20 years. So that puts us about $1 million a year for just capital. And then in addition, just our equipment is, when you look out 20 years, we probably have about a $5 million equipment need over 20 years, and that'll actually have, because most equipment we plan to replace in about 10 years, so that's probably 2 of everything. And so over 20 years, that's 250,000, which that's where the 1.2 million capital cost came in the one deal. One thing to look at, if we were to, so the thing to look at from a model is if we were to, we talked about how if you did the increase all at one time, whichever increase we go with, if we did all at one time, it could be a little tricky, especially for the commercial properties to kind of identify. It does make some adjustments for what kind of growth rates are needed, and also maybe you phase in some improvements. But in this scenario here, this would be assuming we did half the fee the first year and then the full rate by the second year. What that would mean is you would need to do that. You would have to fund only one position in 24, fund one of the new positions in 25, and one new position in 26. And then you would also have to reduce your capital initially down to, it's down here. You would have to reduce your capital by about $300,000 to $400,000 for the first year to then kind of spread it out later. But ultimately, those would be able to be caught up in the later years. That's one scenario you could balance. You could, spread it over other years if you'd need to. It just would mean pushing some other costs out. If we look at the fee calculation itself, you could see if, let's say we went to, on the system development charge, if you did a $550 system development charge instead of the $280, that would drop at another $4, so you would be at the $280 or a $270, depending on 2 or 3 people. But what that would do for commercial, because that's getting back to Councilmember McCleskey's question. So now the system development charge doesn't apply to existing, it's only new. But if you were to do if there were a comparable development starting from grass to a new development, a $550 system development charge would be, like for Fred Meyer, would be about $85,000 that would be added to their construction costs. And Albertsons would be $44,000, and going down to like Dairy Queen would be an additional like almost $5,000. And so that just shows how if you went, $550 is not, I think, not too onerous because these are large. You're talking about $50-60 million capital projects for those type of larger ones, and so that's probably can be absorbed in a permit fee. Or at the time of permit, but if you start getting much beyond that really makes, I think, an impediment to development would be my concern. But those are the ways you could play with. Ultimately, you still have to, the bottom line is find a way to, what are you funding and over what your ratepayers are. Our ratepayers, the assumptions we have in our model, we're assuming a 1.5% growth in ratepayer. This is just general growth, and that's just what we've been seeing. This is just both whether new residents or new commercial or something like that of impervious areas. So we're seeing in new rates about a 1.5% growth per year historically, and so that's built into that overall model. We're seeing though on average a little over 3% cost increase in things, on average. Obviously, this last year it's been closer to 10, but other years we've been less, and on average, this is what we're doing over 20 years, is a 3%.
So Jack, when we get back together, let's talk about that growth rate of 1.5%. I think that's different than we've seen performance of the population growth.
It is a little different because it's basic. That's based on what Leslie has observed over past years, and so we're just projecting it based on the SWIM.
So when we get back together, we'll talk some more about that.
Yeah.
But just wanted to put a pin in that note because we do need to get to an appropriate point here soon so we can hear more about sewer projects and exec session as well.
So the only other thing, and then there's just things to think about, and I'll try to figure out a way. I apologize. I tried to get all these things in the packet, so maybe it'll be easier if I can get you guys for next time hard copy printed out of larger sheets or something. Because anyway, I apologize for that. One of the things in general is We also think about, we need to look at not only what the rate needs to be, you also have to plan for, we don't want to get in the same position we were in now, where we're no longer, we need to account for growth, which, because there is some growth and there is some, it's probably somewhere around 1.5% or so per year, we probably should be planning on growth, but you'd obviously want to monitor that and adjust that accordingly, maybe with each budget cycle or something like that.
So we have system growth and we have inflation costs to mitigate over time. Okay, well, are we good to wrap up here? And we'll come back and get this on our agenda as soon as we reasonably can. I appreciate having your consultant help here as well, and hopefully his schedule will allow also. With that in mind, let's move on to the ARPA sewer discussion.
And fortunately, Roger's also is
Well,
involved with that.
all right.
And also Eric
Good timing
with,
for Roger. All right.
Eric with Green Osborne also is here, I think, for that. And let me close this one out, and I can bring this one up. So with the sewer, we are now, I'll kind of go over where we are. All right. So, and there, Eric, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, say hi. Oh, you're on mute right now. You're still on mute.
I should stop muting. Hi, I'm Eric Delfo. I'm assisting Roger on this project. I'm also with Green Osborne.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so kind of give you an update of where we are, and I'm going to just give you a brief overview, and then I'll turn it over to Eric and Roger to go into more of the details. But so with our ARPA funding, we focused on originally 9. Originally, we looked at 9 areas. Is it 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We originally looked at 8 areas. In the process, we added one. I believe, Eric, right, it was area 8 we added partway through, right? And so we looked at each area. They kind of evaluated what the system needs would to be providing sewer to those neighborhoods. And then basically looked at what the cost could be for those. And some areas we've, think we probably have now, based on looking at what the needs are and what the costs are, we're recommending probably those are not ones that we want to be focusing on. And we can talk a little bit in the future. And then there may be others that we will want to look at. But I think, Eric, I'll turn it over to you if you want, and kind of look at just in general, if you want to kind of go through each one, or how do you want to do it?
Sure, I can handle that if you like. I assume do we have the figures of each area? Okay.
Yeah, we do. One thing to mention too, in developing these and the cost estimate, Eric can talk a little bit about the methodology, or Roger, but we also have reviewed each of these with Pierce County and got their input, which also shaped and tweaked some of these projected programs.
Yeah, so the basic outline for each area, we looked at the topography of the area and looked at Pierce County's sewer system to determine and we looked at some record drawings as well to determine, is it possible to serve this area by gravity? Do we need pump systems? After discussing with Pierce County,
Roger, Eric, I'm gonna back up. Area 2 is, Area 2 is this area right here. This is one we're looking at.
Yep.
On the
Area 2.
northwest area.
The general methodology, but yeah, we effectively eliminated lift stations from the project, mainly because Pierce County said they're too small to be served, and quite frankly, they're probably too expensive. So we do have a number of options, though, that have pressure systems with grinder pumps that we'll walk through. With Area 2, we looked at 2 alternatives here. This one is a pressure grinder system. The manhole out in the street is just a little bit up the hill from this area, so it would require pumping to get up to it. We developed, if you want to go to the next slide, we looked at some costs associated with that. We also identified a gravity option where we would relay some of the sewer in order to make it servable by gravity, just so we could compare those 2 prices. And then we did develop cost estimates for each of these alternatives. They're primarily based on current kind of market rates for the facilities we would need to put in place, but they are planning levels, so we have some pretty large contingencies in there, since we don't know a lot of detail yet. But we did include total project costs. You'll see we included things like engineering, CM, administration, permitting, and maybe potentially easements.
So if I can,
And then, go ahead.
if I can butt in real quick. So on these two, with our discussions with the county, their recommendation was the grinder pump system. It meant a much lower cost. However, it does add, what a grinder pump means is each individual homeowner would have their own grinder pump that they would have to install to join into this. It's a smaller pipe out in the street and a much lower cost. It would mean our dollars get stretched much further. But there would be a little bit more cost on the homeowner. So they would have their cost would add by about $15,000 would be what we'd be talking about for a grinder pump. So the total for this one, for their cost, this would be their hookup fees and all that sort of thing, about $30,000 versus 15.
Since we don't have a map, it would be helpful if someone were to tell us the street that we're talking about.
This is near. What is the street on this one? It is 36 between
35th
Tahoma
and Tahoma, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it may be helpful. So that's this area right here.
Yeah,
Actually.
that's still a little hard to, but the 36 in Tahoma I can handle.
Okay. So I think in the interest of time too, we can kind of go through some of these a little bit. So we have the two options, and the other one is quite a bit more. The other one's around, the first one, the grinder pump is about $1 million. The non-grinder pump is about $1.5 million. It does mean a lower cost to the homeowners, and so part of that option will depend on how much we want to spread our money around.
Yeah, so sometimes, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
That's fine.
grinder pumps, somebody gets to maintain it. Who maintains it?
So in this case, the stuff in the street would be ultimately maintained by the county.
And the county has said they will take grinder pumps on? Thank you. That's
But not the grinder pumps themselves would be individual homeowners, so that would be not in the street. So there was an option we priced out at one point for a pump station, and this would not be a neighborhood that the county would support a pump station for. And so, and I think their preference, based on just affordability on that, is the grinder pump system, they think is the best.
Thank you. Councilmember Fleming.
Jack, I appreciate the whole presentation, but my head is just kind of scratching when you said it would cost a homeowner about $30,000 with the grinder pump to hook up, when we already know that the cost of hookup without a grinder pump, depending on where that is located, runs about $30,000 up to $50,000.
So in this,
So how do we come in with $30,000 including the grinder pump? I'm just baffled.
Good question. So part of the analysis that Eric and Roger did is they looked at what the system development charges and so forth are for the residential. So in this area, because it depends on where you are and if you have any kind of, so each basin has a little bit different charge. This area itself, their system charge is about $15,000. About $14,000 would be their connection charge, and the grinder pump would add $15,000. So that's why they'd be at 30 at this location. So it varies by area to area.
I just have never heard of a $15,000 hookup fee in the last 25 years.
Yeah, and this is where they're at
The
now.
fee is not $15,000. $15,000 is the grinder pump, the cost of the grinder pump itself.
In this one, Eric, also you have estimate. It just happens to be about $15,000. The rest of it, because it's $30,000 total, is what you have on the sheet.
We do have the cost of installing the side sewer as well. That's the 10 grand that's at the top. So there's hiring a contractor to install the side sewer part of it.
So we're up.
Revisit that.
All right, so we're at $25,000 just to have a contractor hook up the grinder. Then what's the hookup fee on top of that?
About a little under $5,000 in this area. So the others you'll see different, but this is
not real.
Yeah, this is where this is based on the current charges they have. Other areas will be different, but this one, for whatever reason,
Is a $5,000 hookup fee?
it's a basin charge of $600 and a capacity charge of $4,000 for this area right now. It could be subject to change timing-wise, but this is what it currently is, at least, based on our, and we
If
ran
prices
this
were
by
that
with the
way,
county
we'd
too.
get everyone hooking up to the sewer. But it's just been cost prohibitive to do that.
Right now, it's really prohibitive because they also have to do the extension of the main line. And that's where those bigger
that's
dollar
in
amounts.
addition.
So
Oh,
that's
fine
where our
print.
money comes in. It helps buy that down. Let's kind of quickly go through and maybe,
Okay.
so area, oh, go ahead.
That's in addition to the fees, the hookup. So the sewer hookup is in addition to what the fees that you're talking right now?
Well, so this, like for example, in the first option, the city cost would be a little over $1 million. The individual cost to a homeowner that only would happen when they hook up, not when we build it, would be about $30,000 if we're doing the grinder pump option.
That's just
Okay.
incredible.
The other question I had is the grinder pump, that one grinder pump for the whole neighborhood is served.
It's one per
Individual-
house, each
Okay,
house.
That's what I thought. I was just,
The county would not
Getting-
support
okay.
a pump station on this one.
right, exactly. And so since this is a sewer system that we're creating, the county won't be responsible for it after it's implemented?
So they would be responsible for the orange line that's shown on the map here. They wouldn't be responsible for the stuff
street.
tying into it.
Tying into, so anything on private property, it's homeowners
Yep. In that scenario.
in this scenario.
Yeah, it may be helpful to maybe kind of blow through some of the areas and then kind of get back on the questions.
That may be it. The other thing is we just are really stymied a bit without having anything to look at here.
On this one.
So we
Yeah,
don't
it's
have
hard.
maps and we don't have cost sheets and we have, this really, actually, we don't have anything in this item on our.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk more high level than the kind of the areas where we're at, and then that'll kind of, we can kind of address. So, so maybe I'll just kind of blow through it, and then if you have some questions that Eric or Roger can address. So the next area we're looking at is Area 5. This is the area about basically from 35th north along 67th. So it basically is the area that, we have that grant for the sewer line in 67th. This would be the rest of that basin that's not being served by the sewer line we're building. So this one is a relatively, it basically has some improvements right on 35th, some connections there, and then also some stuff up there by 27th. So it's a relatively modest area and just tying into these various systems. This one itself is a relatively low cost. It's still about $1 million overall. One thing that's, and we'll show it later, is relative. We have a cost per parcel that is a graphic at the end of the show, but this is going to be one of the higher cost per parcels because it's not serving a lot, because we're already doing a lot of the other stuff, but it checks off a deal if we wanted to go that route. The next one we're looking at is parcel 8, or area 8. And Area 8 is what was historically been called Fircrest Acres. That is east of 67th, between 35th Street and, what is that, 37th? Basically that little segment right between here and Fircrest. And this is one that I know Councilmember Fleming would write. I mean, this is one we've had people asking about sewer service since near the beginning.
It was the no man's land.
What's that?
It was the no man's land.
Yeah. And so we have a number of these parcels that are currently to be served, or are currently being served by Fircrest, and it's possible that, and then there's a couple that the county says it makes sense to continue to have that service, or some other ones. These areas here, it does have a handful of parcels would still have to have grinder pumps, but for the most, this is all gravity. It is a relatively high dollar amount for this. It's about $4.3 million, so it'd be about 2/3 of our cost. One consideration here, though, is it does serve a number of folks, but it also is probably the most environmentally sensitive area. It's the one closest to a creek. The next area here is what, kind of the Sunset Beach area and that whole area downhill. This is one I don't want to spend too much time on, partly because when we look at the dollar amount, it's, the estimated cost is around $11 million. Our funding we have is $6 million. It's very, very expensive, and it has the highest dollar amount per, that one's actually incorrect. It actually should be, it's about, but it has the highest dollar amount per parcel as well, because it's all expensive. This would be pump stations, and it's a very expensive thing. So this is one area we're recommending we probably don't focus on anymore, because it just, it wouldn't work out. The next area we're looking at is Area 11, and go back to the one map. Area 11 is kind of right in the middle of the city here, so it's between Cirque and 40th, and between 67th and probably about Bridgeport, and so
Bridgeport, that's correct.
Yep. And so 11 is kind of near the Westwood Square area, but it's just kind of right in the middle of the city. It's one of those pockets that people are always surprised are not served by sewer. This one we're able to fit everything with gravity sewer, and so it's a fairly clean one. It's still that similar to 8, though it is an expensive one, 4.7. So we couldn't do both of those neighborhoods. It has kind of a mid-range of cost per parcel. The next one is another one that's been a long requested area, and this is the Park Ridge, Park Royal area. It's off of Cirque Drive and like 80, whatever that is. 89? 86. Park Royal. And so this is that neighborhood. Also several years, they have a lot of failing septic areas, systems. There's 2 scenarios on this one. The one the county recommends is they recommended the grinder pump one, is that right?
That's correct.
For this one, because of the cost, where if the grinder pump option is a cost of $18,000 per parcel, compared to doing a standard gravity sewer, which we have to get quite deep, is about $40,000 per parcel. So our spreading the money would be quite economical on the grinder pump system. The next one is our Area 21, and Area 21 is up there by Hannah Pierce, or not Hannah Pierce, 64th, kind of that neighborhood that borders the Meadow Park Golf Course on the other side of Lakewood Drive. That's the one where we have some money. And this is the area shown in light blue that we got both from the state and from the county, from their ARPA money, to do a sewer extension into this neighborhood from Cirque, and also building our road a little bit. This one is a little funny because the area itself, if you look at the area where we have these red lines, the neighborhoods that can, basically the areas that can go into the gravity line that we would do is really what we're describing as phase 1. And also a little bit over here on the segment on the other side of 67th. The bulk of the area and the bulk of the costs we're talking about a phase 2, which would relate to a proposed county Tacoma project, which would run a new sewer line, diverting some Tacoma flows into the county system. And in looking at, because we had other options of pump stations and this and that, and the county didn't recommend doing that. And so basically I think one area that would make good sense to do, and probably combine it with our project, is on what we're calling the phase 1, is maybe you just do that. That has the lowest cost per parcel of $9,000 per parcel to do those at the time maybe of our other project or similar time. And then the second phase, which is quite a bit more, would be diverted, kind of postponed to the county project.
I was going to say, I believe Councilmember Wood has a quick question on this one.
Yeah.
Well, kind of a general comment about this, since we can't see it anyway, and to be honest, you've gone through a lot of different parcels, and almost none of that information has been retained. That may be a failing on my part, but what would really help me is the next time we talk about this is if we do, and I'm going to go Army on you for a second, a decision matrix where you just lay out all the different parcels across one axis, the other one you lay out criteria, environmental sensitivity, number of parcels served, cost per parcel, whatever other criteria are relevant, and then weight them at the end and give us something we can work with that would give us an overall evaluation tool. Because right now, I haven't retained a thing, and I'm sorry.
And at this point, the intent is kind of just show you what work's been done.
Okay.
The actual criteria and the rating, we still have a critical piece of step, and that is the public outreach and education. Because there's always the environmental and this and that, but also we also want to know what's the public interest in these areas. So we don't really want to target a neighborhood that everybody doesn't want, or vice versa. So once we have that, we'll put that together, and then that will I like the idea of the matrix like you recommend.
Appreciate it.
Weight that together. So in that area, we're recommending just doing the first phase, maybe the second phase. The last area, and then we're quick, this is area 22. This is the area out there by Orchard, kind of the big area between Orchard and Cirque, and all the way up there where that, near where the big housing development, the Knolls, got put in. This is this is one that's on the other end of the spectrum. 9 we recommended not doing because it's too expensive. This one we're recommending not focusing on because essentially the major infrastructure has been put in by the Knolls, and anything new for connections is pretty nominal for individual homeowners to maybe extend lines. It doesn't make sense to do it for a city investment, and so this one, I don't want to spend more time on it, but we recommend, it just has such nominal benefit for a handful of parcels. So this one right here, and we'll have to show it, but we range between 9,000 per parcel up to 58,000 per parcel. And so that's one of the deals. I need to work on the font too, and we need a map to kind of show that better graphic. But these lower ones are probably fairly, a good idea maybe, but at the same time we have to look at balancing how you fund the whole program. So our next steps really are going to be, we want to do in October, get out some directed mailers to folks, kind of talking about the program, get education about what we're looking at, and then in partnership with that, do like an online survey to see if we can get some public input and gauge interest in the different neighborhoods for, what are the interests for getting sewer extended into their neighborhoods. And then with a target of actually doing like a Teams online meeting in November. Our goal is to do that kind of early November, to try to at least separate a bit from the holiday season, because we are concerned if we get too close to Thanksgiving and so forth, availability for folks is less. So. And
Jackie would do that for all these proposed areas, including the ones that really are a negative recommendation at this point?
So the current plan would be to do a single meeting. Or am I misspeaking that? A single meeting or one for each area? I guess it depends on, some of it may be guided on what kind of interest we're seeing on the survey and the stuff, but.
Roger? Yeah, one of the comments that we had on the public outreach part of it was, it's possible to get a single person speaking of their neighborhood as either, super pro or super con for the service. And so we were thinking that it might be good to get some online information or get some individual information from the different neighborhoods, and then maybe do a more broad city online meeting or something like that.
So I guess in my mind, I'm questioning, and there's some neighborhoods, some of these projects may be in excess of $50,000 of city share in order to make a go of it. And there are some that in themselves are twice as much as the money that we have available. Those become sort of obvious things we're not going to do because we don't have that kind of money. So just trying to see if that makes sense. But I think we're going to get to stew on this a little bit, come back and talk about it. And so you need to move forward with your November and October outreaches.
Yeah, so it'll be after we do that, and we come back, kind of show that, and then, and then come back with that kind of a decision matrix kind of thing to kind of look at what kind of, how we balance the money and what's the best way to go forward with that.
Well, I think we're all excited to find out what those neighborhood meetings get to tell us. So it sounds like the next steps and the timeline we're on, and you've got a consultant team underway, so go ye forth and be successful.
All right. Sounds good.
So I say that just as a collective voice of the five of us here.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
All right, yes, indeed. Thanks, Jack. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
at this
Thanks, guys.
time,
Yep.
are we ready to move on to our last item of the evening? Good.
Oh, I did something.
So we are about to enter into an executive session, which is a closed session. The city council will now recess into an executive session for approximately 1 hour. To discuss potential litigation of legal counsel is allowed by RCW 4230-110, parenthetically 1I. The council is not expected to take further action following the executive session and will reconvene with the sole purpose to adjourn the regular meeting. And with that, we're going to be moving into executive session now. It's 9:30 PM. We continue to be in executive session. We're going to extend the executive session until 9:45. We'll be back then. reconvene our meeting at 9:44 PM, September 5th, and we're now adjourning our meeting. There's no action to be taken by council. Meeting adjourned.